The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good Tuesday evening to you. Dan Yorke State of Mind here on MyRI TV and Fox Providence. Tonight, my guest is Ray Rickman. He is the executive director of the Stages of Freedom organization, which, as you will learn, is about 4 or 5 years old and has done a lot of work in the community. Ray has been a staple in this community for a long time, a state representative in the old days, and an on-the-ground, prolific fundraiser, as you will see, and a deep thinker on issues of race and beyond here in our community. So, with no further ado, when we come back, Ray Rickman on COVID-19, on some community issues that he feels are really important, and a reflection on what's happening with the relationship between police and the African American community. Stay with us on My State of Mind. We'll be right back. Again, to My State of Mind for this Tuesday evening. Ray Rickman is the executive director of the Rhode Island Stages of Freedom. And if you're not aware of what that is, you're going to find out. He's a former legislator, and I consider him an old friend of the show. He's a great thinker and somebody who I rely on for not only a down-to-earth perspective, but a 36,000-foot perspective on things of humanity, never mind things of race. Ray, great to have you in. Thank you very much. So before we start, explain to everybody what the Stages of Freedom is.
So we are 4 years old. We're a cultural organization, but our big program is teaching 500, mainly African-American kids how to swim every year. Black kids drown 5.5 times more often than anyone else. And then we do cultural programs that are African American oriented for the entire community. We believe if white folks knew more about Black folks, that the world would change. And that's what we do. What we've done since March 11th is create COVID-19 website to help African American families and others navigate this pandemic. And it's obvious almost everybody needs help, from simple things like washing your hands to the complex things of how to shelter at home alone, social distancing, which we don't seem to be any good at, and the list goes on. We've raised about $30,000 to do this. And I'm going to talk about money again, if you let me, because everything I know African American in Rhode Island is collapsing. John Hope, Urban League, OIC, and it has nothing to do with COVID-19. It's just what's been going on since 2008, when the economy almost collapsed. Stages of Freedom is going the opposite direction, but we need help. Everybody does. Final comment on this. Brown University got in trouble with its athletic program. Billionaire showed up and is bringing it back to life. So we don't have any billionaires. So we're going to need a whole lot of $20 people. And I talk about that in a very wide sense.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to. Might as well do it now. We'll remind people a couple of times. Happy to help you raise money, because I know that it always goes to the right cause. How do people contribute? And we'll remind them at the end of the show as well.
It's stagesoffreedom.org, and they go on and donates at the top, but they can also put in search. And the reason I say they can put in search is because that'll let them go to COVID-19. And by the way, even though this is geared towards African Americans, it is good for everybody. But we're a $200,000 a year operation. We'd like to be a $2 million a year operation. Seriously, I cannot tell you, even though you know, all the work there is to be done, all the work there is to be done. And everything I know that I love operates on a shoestring. And things I just like have millions and millions of dollars. I have donors who send me $20, and then I look and see that they gave another institution $25,000. And I say, why couldn't they have given me $200? Why?
All right. Well, we'll leave that question hypothetically for the audience right now to respond on their own. I don't want to necessarily go backwards because there's so much in the news cycle that we need to talk about really importantly. But Ray and I worked on this pool thing, years ago, and we were very difficult on the then mayoral administration, and it seemed to reconcile itself sort of at the end of that summer. And full disclosure, I'm not sure that I've kept enough touch with it. What was learned from that closed pool battle, Ray, that you fought gallantly and I supported you on, and then
No, you were more than a supporter. What happened is we saved the pool. The mayor, former, was going to pour cement in the swimming pool. And we told him he was only the custodian and that it was the destruction of public property, and on and on and on. And finally, he backed down. He's busy running for governor. And all the attention you and others helped bring got him to back down. But the pools are the same. The kids just go there and put their feet in them. There are no swimming lessons. They don't have, well, I don't want to be too critical, but there is so much to be done. Do you want to tell you what I'd love to do? And I wish there were a millionaire listening. I want to build an Olympic swimming pool for the city of Providence, like Brown University has. And it would cost about $14-15 million. We would attach it to a school. And the state would pay 80% because they pay 80% of any improvement to a school. We get in line in 2 or 3 years from now, we get the money, 10, 12 million from the state. I need $1 million donor in order to convince this mayor that we should get started. So we'd have that little money in a kitty, and then we wait for the state's money. And can you imagine you throw in $1 million and 10 million comes attached to it? And there are so many of your listeners who have $1 million or a cousin that has it. I'm personally tired of raising money $20 at a time. It is knee bending.
Got that. I think people are getting a general sense that Ray is a necessary full court press for this, and maybe the full court press will inure some benefit for the Stages of Freedom Project. When we come back, I want to touch base on the realities of the COVID-19 virus in the African American community. Of course, we've got a news cycle of events here that have everybody swirling. We'll be right back with Ray Rickman from the Stages of Freedom. Again, that website is stagesoffreedom.org. Stay tuned.
Tackling the stories and issues that everyone's talking about. Catch Dan Yorke's State of Mind. Log on to WPRI.com, weeknights at 8.
Rickman, who heads up an organization called Stages of Freedom, and in the last segment, he explained some of the good work and a special project since early March on COVID-19. It's funny, Ray, that you say March 11th was the time that you began this. I still I'm not convinced about which antibody test I ought to be taking, but the week of March 4th, woo, did I have a good one. And at the time they were telling me, hey, have you been to China? Have you been to Italy? And if not, you got another thing. I don't know, who knows? But now we're learning this thing has been around for months prior, maybe January, February, maybe even earlier. So that's the reality that we're all dealing with now. Spikes around the country, a little bit more of a settled moment here in Rhode Island. Give me your short version as to what the status is of the COVID-19 challenge.
Well, we're in trouble for at least a year. I actually know a little bit about pandemics and viruses. I used to pay for 16 doctors in West Africa, and I worked with them for years on Ebola. And I learned things. I wasn't on the ground, but I raised money for them and I learned things. And we haven't taken this very serious. I think about 20% of the population really has. I've been in the House since the 10th of March, but most people haven't. They go shopping when they don't have to. They do all kinds of things. And I worry about people 60, 70, 80 years old at the grocery store. They should not be there or anyplace else. We have deaths every day, 10 people, 12 people, 14 when we're not lucky. This is horrendous. And I think the population isn't paying attention. And then What we needed to do, we needed to do 2 or 3 weeks early. When I started talking about this in public, the middle of February, people wanted to call the police or send me the butler. And I would explain to them that this is coming. How do I know? I read it in the New York Times on the 25th of January, and then the man in the White House talked about it on the 27th of January and dismissed it as nothing. And the intelligence community had told him. So every chance I get, I tell people, wear a mask. You leave home, wear a mask. Okay, you're 22 years old. It's not going to kill you. It may not even send you to the hospital. But you're going to give this to a 72-year-old, and they're going to die. So in terms of community and humanity, we should be doing more. We should work on this social distancing. I go walking every day, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. About 10% of people share the sidewalk and get out the way, get their 6 feet away. The rest of the population, I have to do it. And I'm giving the governor very high marks on her efforts, her personal efforts to work this forward for us. But I'm giving the public about a C- D+ grade, and I'm worried to no end now that we're freer to go out in public.
Okay, yeah, I get that. Let me ask you this. Health issues in the African American community, always a serious matter, a political discussion that we need to have, regardless of, inclusive rather, of your concern. What's your acute concern in the Black community?
So as you know, nationally, Rhode Island's a fabulous, lucky place for once in our life. We should have 1/4 of the deaths and illness that Massachusetts has. We're 1/4 the size. We don't. We have a 1/9. And I can't figure out the science of it. I talk to Dr. Michael Fine all the time, and there is no science. It's just a gift from God. Now, might God turn his back on us? I don't know. But this thing could zoom. And so again, we need to do our part. Put on the mask. Stay in the house when you don't have to go places. This idea that you have to go to a restaurant and eat is absurd. And I have 20 friends who own restaurants, but it doesn't make any sense. You go in there, you take the mask off, you're dealing with a waiter, you have people allegedly 6 feet away from you who walk within a foot of you to get to their table. This isn't social distancing, and it's not necessary. And why we are so anxious to be out in the world, I don't know. Really.
And it's called psychological health, and it's a constant battle, man. And I'll tell you, when we're getting into this place now, even within families, we have disagreements within, even our family from time to time as to, what's right, what's wrong, looking at the numbers. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around, but your point of view is heard clearly here. That, at least in the early mid stages of this recognition about COVID, Latino community was very concerned that it was not getting the proper outreach and the proper education and communication with a language barrier. I think there has been a lot of COVID acceleration of proper indignation from the Black community based on some events that we'll talk about in the next segment. You have a socioeconomic point of view here on the virus?
This is very difficult to talk about, but when you have underlying conditions, double, triple, 5 times as many of them, heart, stroke, diabetes, as other people, say, over 50 years old, you can't have this virus. And there are all kinds of things we don't know about this virus, besides making Black and Latino, but certainly Black people, more ill. We don't know what this is going to be like in our body 4 or 5 years from today. That's why I warn a lot of young people. You think you're going to get it and big deal, 3 days later, you're going to be fine. We don't know what this virus is. Science hasn't told us yet. So again, we all need to be careful. I wish, this is this moment, and you can talk about it in a wider sense in the next segment. But this is a moment in which I wish the health department would stop spending 1/4 of 1% of its money on minority health. Did you hear me? 1/4 of 1%. Minorities are 24% of the population in this state. Would I like 24% of the health department's money spent on people of color? Yes. Would I be happy with 10%? Yes. 1/4 of 1%. This kind of ridiculous thing reoccurs in our daily lives in regards to people of color all day long, and we don't fix it. But maybe this is a moment.
When we come back, I'll tell you one thing. The country's going through a moment, not only with COVID-19, but with plenty else. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Ray Rickman from Stages of Freedom, RI.org. Check it out. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our final segment here on Dan Yorke's State of Mind. Ray Rickman is the executive director of Stages of Freedom, RI Stages of Freedom. I'm sorry, Ray, RI.
Yes, no, just Stages of Freedom. The easiest thing, Stages of Freedom /donate. That'll get them right there. But stagesoffreedom.org.
Stagesoffreedom.org. There you go, folks. George Floyd, now Rayshon Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're very connected to the Black Lives Matter movement. I've got 5 minutes. What's in your head right now? Your heart?
So this has been going on forever. And in modern time, after World War II, all the Black soldiers came back walking kind of proud from France and Germany. And the last lynchings in this country took place. So right through 1956. And then we know this is constant. What we have now are videotapes. And sometimes even the police officer has on their camera, and they are indicting themselves by their action. What I know is if a person not of color was asleep in a car at a Wendy's, the police would not have killed them because they probably wouldn't even to have arrested them. I watched the video, and if he was drunk, he was only so drunk. And what happened is he didn't want to be arrested, if you listen, because he had family celebrations and he was awfully resistant, and the end result is death. This should not happen over a man intoxicated or not overly intoxicated, sleep in a Wendy's drive-through that people were driving around. I'm not even sure why the Wendy's people didn't go out and knock on the window and say, please move. I could speculate, but I don't want to do it because I want people on my side. I don't want them. But white people don't get in trouble like this. And when you get in trouble, it leads to the next step that it could get out of hand. That's what I want to stop. And we have the famous case now of the woman in Central Park calling the cops and lying on the black man. Now, I've been a victim of this 10, 12 times in my life. And luckily, nothing bad has come of it. And I'm not talking about, I don't drink, so I'm not, I've never done anything. But do you see I'm beginning to bawl here? And it worries me to no end. Do you know why? On this side of my head, I have a huge scar where Mississippi deputy sheriffs beat me and pulled the brains out of my skull on a Freedom March with James Meredith. So I've got 10 of these with police beating me, and I'm 100% innocent. And most black folks are 100% innocent or mildly guilty or very guilty. But the result should not be death. And I think often police officers are frightened of black people when they shouldn't be. They overreact. I've been on drive-alongs with police where they tased people twice, and I thought both times they shouldn't have tased them. They shouldn't have tased. It shouldn't have happened. Now, how do we get it to stop? Police need training. Certain people need not to be police. They need to begin to call people in who are police officers and say, should you be a police officer in this city, Providence, say 51% Black and brown, Asian, or should you be a policeman in Lincoln or Smithfield, where folks are white, because you relate better to white people? You know, no one ever does that, because the guy's got a job that pays better than he would make in Lincoln in the police department. So he wants to be here, even though he doesn't want to be here. And how do I know he doesn't want to be here? Because so many people moved when they got the opportunity to. You know, when the law changed, that they didn't have to live here. They lived in nice neighborhoods, and up they went and went. And I don't blame them.
I only have a minute. Where are we going in the next few weeks and a month? Never mind the long.
It depends on city councils all over the nation, mayors all over the nations, and talk show hosts all over the nation. I've actually been impressed. Most of the talk show hosts have been good, civil, decent on this issue. The average American is publicly recognizing that racism is structural in this society, and that we shouldn't have a police bill of rights. You are a policeman. You probably have you're a caregiver. I believe this about all caregivers. They have a very high responsibility, nurses, doctors, police officers, and they don't need special protections.
That issue heats up here. Listen, there's a commission that's being put together. That usually means there's a shelf for it. But I will tell you that that
You see my head shaking?
not be the case as we go. But when and if that conversation heats up, and it needs to, I'll bring you back. Stagesoffreedom.org is the website. Check it out for contributions to the COVID-19 response and to build a pool. Ray, it's always good to speak with you.
Thank you for having me on.
We'll continue to speak with Ray Rickman on these issues as they continue to evolve. He's also very connected to the Black Lives Matters movement, and I think we're going to be able to reach out and have a better understanding as to what's going on in the community there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back tomorrow night. Scheduled is the Education Commissioner, who has some work on her desk right now, don't you think? We'll see you, and of course on the radio this week from 2 till 6 on WPRO. Good night.